Hello, we're going to talk about how software is making manufacturers more competitive. I have with me John Krajewski, Vice President Product Management, Aveva. I'm Mark T. Hosky, Control Engineering Editor and Content Manager since 1994. John, welcome and thanks for today's discussion.
Thanks so much for having me.
Oh, great. Yes. So what market trends are being addressed by Aveva's latest products and services?
Recently, Aveva introduced an offering we call Aveva Operations Control, which really what it was a reaction to what we had done with a lot of our major enterprise customers, where our customers at the top end of our scale, we saw we were leveraging the benefits of our broader portfolio. And many of our other customers who were buying one piece at a time were not getting all the benefits. And so we wanted to create a package that we're able to take the advantages that our larger enterprise customers were getting and make it accessible to our smaller customers. And so in essence, initially it was a commercial restructuring, and now we're actually working on the technical embodiment on that, which is to bring all these products together. So across our portfolio, we've had classic brands like Wonderware and SciTech and Indusoft and ClearSCADA, and we've also had our historians, our reporting capabilities. We've got cloud functions and our insight capabilities. We've got work instructions and customer collaborations in our teamwork capabilities and our workflow and instructions sets there. And most of our customers were piece parting. And now what we're doing is going to market for that as one consistent entity, and making it very, very easy for customers to obtain. And I think we'll have some more questions that'll go into why we're doing this. But this is truthfully what we had seen is at the very top ends of our customer base, we're seeing these advantages, and we wanted to be able to bring those capabilities across all of our customers.
Thanks for mentioning the brands so people understand what's involved. What types of customers would be interested in these kinds of grouped offerings?
That was one that it's actually somewhat difficult to answer, because as we look at our customers, we deal with customers of all size. Customers who may be making a small departmental purchase, and customers who may be making an enterprise-wide deployment that's going across an entire organization globally. And I can say with some confidence that all of them. What I mean by that is that we've structured our offerings so that we've seen that our customers tend to operate in what I'll call three different molds. What I would say is that kind of local process sell, people who need to do the work of today. This is where I teach HMI and reports and history capabilities have been, where someone just needs to ensure that I'm executing this process, completing this production run, and the work of today. Many of our customers tend to often in our bigger scope, what we tend to be in our SCADA applications, where they tend to have a larger scope, maybe a bigger site, geographically distributed applications. And in those customers, they often need to have scheduling and execution and other capabilities. And so we've packaged those together into another tier. And then we have even a third set of customers, which tend to operate on a more enterprise level. They're the ones that need to be able to have their business goals react very quickly. Maybe they're setting pricing dynamically, or they're needing to be able to determine where they sell their products, where they make, what is the best opportunities for them to maintain those their profitabilities and their margins. And so they may be making strategic level behavior decisions that need to flow throughout their entire organization. And so we've created packages for every type of customer. So we have one we called Edge, which is more on that process cell execution. We have one that's called Supervisory, which is more on that larger distributed application, and one that's called Enterprise for customers who need to go in those sizes.
So are there certain market drivers behind these developments?
Yeah, there are, without a doubt. There's very often as a product manager, I have things that I look at as that create opportunities. Opportunities are often created by a number of cases, where things like the commoditization of technology. And everybody now has got a computer in their pocket, where in the past used to be, well, you have to spend thousands of dollars on an industrialized tablet to be able to moving across the plant floor. So things like connected worker strategies, access to cloud technologies, and ubiquitous. And cloud technology have been around for quite a while. And 10 years ago, when we started engaging with our customers around the areas of cloud, their initial reactions were, stay away, we're not ready for cloud. But now where they're finding that outside of their operations, they're using cloud commonly in their ERP systems, or even in their financial and data systems that they're doing there. And so they're becoming more welcome to using cloud, not in primary process control, but in things that support, right? If I need to access coordination of collaboration of a team, Well, that's something that they're willing to use cloud for. Whereas, the acknowledgement of a process critical alarm, maybe not. Maybe that's something that still needs to be on premise. So that's what we refer to as hybrid, right? And so this hybrid cloud technology is really working on how do we consolidate and coordinate across customers, driving their needs to address what they refer to as a siloed information. We went out and we looked across a lot of our customers and tried to identify what challenges were holding them back from meeting their strategic objectives in operations. And one of the most common responses we heard was, the way data gets siloed between organizations. If I give you an example, we had one customer which they had SCADA systems in one part of the organization and they had GIS systems in the other organization. And we interviewed both of the teams. They had different teams that were operating these technologies. And we often asked them, is that, well, do you have need for SCADA data? When we asked the GIS team, they said, yeah. And when we need that data, we'll get them to email that to us. Email, really? Okay. And the other side, we would ask the SCADA guys, do you have information for that geospatial data? And they said, of course. Well, how do you get it? We ask them for a report and they go into Excel and they create one and they email it to us. And we ask them sort of generically behind us, like, if you just had ubiquitous access to this information, wouldn't that be good for you? And they scratch their heads like, is that possible? Right. And so that is something, of course, they want to do. And so when we look at the things that our customers absolutely want to achieve, it's breaking the boundaries of what they thought was possible because of the way they're organized. They tend to be organized and structured in these silos that have their own sets of data. And customers often have dozens of data systems inside of theirs that are often siloed. And that so the overall organization has access to the information that will help them to make that critical decision, but the people who need to be able to make that decision don't have access to that data. That's one of the key challenges that we're trying to overcome with what we're calling Aveva Operations Control.
Thank you. You hinted at many benefits along the way there, and thanks for the example. Are there other key benefits provided that you'd like to go over?
There are many, but one of the ones that I think is also kind of addressing some of the key challenges. We found that many of our customers had surprisingly large turnover rates. The people that come into their organization, and often what you have here is you started to create a culture of what we refer to as a hero culture. A hero culture is that guy is tops. He's been here for 15 years or 20 years, and if we lose him, we're in deep trouble. He's the one that makes sure everyone else knows what to do. And unfortunately, we've seen a very common case where there's a lot of turnover. And even though an organization may have been executing these processes and the procedures for a long period of time, that information leaves. It goes, somebody they identify something and then that information is lost. So being able to work with people to maintain the best of breed execution in their operations, to be able to collect the information. A simple example is whereas someone had observed an alarm that happened in their process, then they were able to disposition that alarm. Next guy comes through and says, "I've got the same alarm. What do I do?" Well, we're looking in processes, and what we call Aveva teamwork is something that we're looking to digitize that knowledge, digitize that information, so that they continue to operate as excellently as possible, even as they have the individual resources within an organization swapping in and out. So what really, that is one example. There are probably many and dozens that we could talk about here that would blow out our time. But the one key thing here is that we're looking far beyond what had been our traditional remit. The remit of those classic power brands I was talking about in the past was controlling assets, connecting to those physical assets. Now we're looking more at the day of the life of what does an operator do? Who does he coordinate with? What do they need to do? What are their responses as part of this? How do we ensure that everyone is, bringing their A game at every time, and that we're, really speeding the ability to execute? So as we stand back and we look across an entire process, it's a really exciting time, because I've been part of the HMI and SCADA business for decades at this point, and it was kind of one of those cases where there's been a few opportunities in my career where you go and be like, wow, the world just got way bigger, and this is one of those examples.
What are the differentiated features? Essentially, what's different than others addressing these needs?
I would say that the most significant difference here is, the power that we have as Aveva of having a very broad portfolio. We have a portfolio that has spanned, three plus decades, almost 4 decades of technologies there, and many mergers and acquisitions. So while the key capability we have here is that, many of the cases we have where people going independent, they're creating these silos. And the silos that I was referring to earlier. And in order order to break down the silos, you need to have that broad access. We have, the world's most commonly installed HMI applications. We have the world's most commonly installed SCADA applications. We have the MES capabilities. We have the historian capabilities. We have the cloud content. All of those things come together. Whereas there are other offerings out there in the marketplace which represent pieces and parts of that solution. There aren't any out there in the marketplace that have that broad breadth of capability in one package with the tight integration that comes between them. And so that'll be the most unique differentiator that we have in the market today.
Thanks for mentioning integration. What are the key or new technologies integrated, or what technologies have you put together to help enable this package of offerings?
As we look at these core technologies and the things that we're working to bring these things together, sometimes it's as simple as make sure they're all on the same licensing technology, and then that's going to be make sure they're all installed in the same way, that they all can use the same users and the same user authentication, because we don't want people to have to be signing on, so we have to have single sign-on to these things so they can bring them together, as well as that you have to have free data integration between them, and data integration has to go beyond just the exchange of data. But if I want to write to a data point, I have to have knowledge of the permissions of the individual that needs to write so that I can determine whether or not I deny the right. And those are all things that we need to have as part of a ubiquitous system, right? And those are the full integrations. We certainly have visions of areas of things that we're going to do as we go forward, where we're able to do far more of this. But our first step right now is to bring those all together. And part of one of the more exciting parts of this year is that my job is to direct where our investment goes into the future. So we've got some great bold ideas of things we're going to do, but step one was to address the commercial construct. I think we'll talk about some of that perhaps a little bit later, and the other part was to ensure that these things come together as a consistent offering. As I mentioned, it's not an illusion. We were going to market in the past as competitors. There are cases where our products, before we had acquired or consumed or become part of a large organization, we acted independently in the business. And so one of the key things that we've been doing for the last couple of years is to bring together common technologies, and examples of when I introduce a new OPC-UA server capability, now it works for everything, right? So we don't have to then say, well, I need an OPC-UA server for that component and that component and that component. We've just built a lot of these common technology layers and these data service capabilities that really start bringing our overall portfolio together as one homogeneous capability.
How has the pandemic changed coordination, collaboration, and cybersecurity as it relates to your offerings?
It's that the pandemic, as we've all seen, has created a case where fewer and fewer people are actually having access to the plant floor. It used to be, I would work with people in engineering, or people in planning and scheduling, and people in, as well as operations and maintenance. And often what they're doing in order to protect the social distancing policies that they have as an organization is that the guys in engineering can no longer even get onto the plant floor because they have to do things remotely. And so remote access. And so many of those engineers, they're not even coming into the office. They're still working from home, but they still need to coordinate. And so over the pandemic, we've seen that a lot of the need for remote technologies, whether they be web-based access or remote desktop-based access, both of which we have strong capabilities in there, we've seen that those things have been very prevalent, right? To be able to continue the order of the day was continue business, right? Because before, I know a lot of the projects that were ongoing around improvements and efficiencies and gains there, those all kind of got put on hold when the pandemic was like, all right, we need to make sure we can continue and have consistency. And so those remote coordinations and collaborations were key to that. And clearly cybersecurity is huge right there. So when you look at that, there's always a major concern when it comes to cybersecurity. And what we have seen here, whether it's how do we work together with VPNs or reverse proxies or other types of technologies that ensure that the customers can continue to produce, continue to execute their operations, continue to do their projects internally that they have to execute. In many of these cases, we've even seen project startups which have happened remotely, which to me as an old school system integrator, I'm kind of imagining how hard that must be. But all of those things have to be done in a very secure manner. And so we've actually built up, we began our own internal cybersecurity team probably going on I guess close to 15 years ago at this point. So we've been at that game for a while now, where it's just part of our blood, just part of our DNA, and how we do those things to ensure that we help our customers. And we've even worked together with a lot of our customers' internal security departments to ensure they understand our policies, they understand our processes. We've even had our products independently certified by cybersecurity organizations. And so these are all things that we take paramount to supporting our customers' businesses.
How has the outlook for and the use of software and services changed across teams for the life cycle of software?
I would say there's a couple different things that have happened there. We were just talking about cybersecurity a bit earlier. We talked about cloud and how some of those things influence things. So, for example, a traditional aspect of what customers had done for many years was, I'm going to install a version and I'm going to leave that version in place for as long as I can possibly do that. We've gone and found customers that were operating on software that would be 5, even 10 years outside of its mature life cycle, meaning that we weren't issuing updates, weren't issuing fixes. And right now we're seeing that customers are moving more quickly. Right. So they're moving more quickly. So many of the customers' IT organizations are actively going to be scanning their machines for outdated software. So let's say that you're running a version of a Microsoft dependency, like a C++ runtime, and that is currently in a mature phase. A lot of our customers are now actively scanning. Is that thing up to date? It's not. And they're wanting to understand, how do we update our software more quickly? How can we move more quickly? And even to that end, we're starting to see a bit more of a willingness to embrace things like cloud technologies. As I mentioned earlier, not necessarily on the plant floor for HMI and SCADA purposes, but for the supporting things around remote report distribution and access and data and coordination between teams. The one things that they're looking at that is they're going, this whole issue of who owns it, who owns the servers, who maintains the servers, who's maintaining the images, who's updating them from a security perspective, who's ensuring we have the latest and greatest. I mean, that can be someone else's problem. That is starting to be something that initially where it was not accepted. And we're starting to see these a significant change that's happening as part of that. And that's also one of the things that's hastened our move to what we're calling now Aveva Operations Control, which is a hybrid solution. It combines and ensures that we have those cloud components where the customers are willing to do that, and ensuring that those cloud components are tightly a part of a common application with the things that remain on premise. And because it is, for them, it's a single application that just happens to go across from wherever the users may be. That's where the cloud component really helps, to where the assets are, and that's where the on-premise parts, and put those together, and we call that hybrid.
So what types of channels will be offering and supporting these products?
We've over the years, through different names, and I'll harken back to things like Wonderware. Wonderware, one of its key differentiators was its distribution channel. So Wonderware had its distribution partners that were global, and now we're kind of rebranding that distribution channel through something we're calling Aveva Select. And so many of your local Wonderware partners now maybe calling Aveva Select partners, and that Aveva Select partner distribution network is going to be our primary go-to-market and channel. So they'll not only be doing local sales, local technical pre-sales support, as well as tech support and ongoing consultancy and guidance in the use of our technology. We have strong partnerships with these distributors, and so we're very excited to work with them to make this a reality for our customers.
How has the software changed and become easier to purchase, implement, and use? You've alluded to some of this already, but
Yeah, one of the things I mentioned here was that we decided to rethink completely our commercial policies, and one of the things that I'll admit, from being a product manager, who then was owning things with so many varieties of commercial models, right? And so that it suddenly, as my responsibilities became, it says, well, you have to have this one over here, which is based on tags, and this one over here, which would have been based upon servers, and this one over here, which may have been based on clients. And how do we go together and create one very simplified model? And then we looked at what we had done with many of our enterprise customers. And with our enterprise customers, the advantage that they had is they said, just let me use whatever I need to use to be able to achieve the outcomes that we have. And that's where we've introduced that when we sell the Viva Operations Control, it's sold on a site-based license, not on tags, not on software installations, on a site. So it gives them a certain catalog of capabilities, whatever you want to use. You need another screen, put another screen in. You need another server, put it on the server. You have access to everything you need to do that with this site-based license. So not only does it have access to our entire portfolio of capabilities targeted at those edge, supervisory, and enterprise type customers, but it also just gives them the free ubiquitous access. So you need to store more data, store more data. We're not going to have any commercial limitations on your overall operation success. And we're finding that customers have absolutely really flocked to that notion, because in the past they were forced to make decisions around, well, where do I put a screen? Even though I may need to put more screens, or may think it may be more advantageous right now, I'm waiting on, the commercial constraints, capital budgets, other reasons why they weren't making these decisions. Now they have the freedom to do whatever they need to do. And for many of them, it's kind of fun to watch them be kids in a candy store, because they're just being able to do exactly what it is they've always wanted to do without any restraints.
So that certainly is a major difference, but how and what are other key differences in product offering, sales, or support?
When we look across this, one of the key things here is, as I mentioned here, is how we're going to market. And one of the things that we're doing today, that we're working, is bringing everything together as one entity. And it's something that is going to be driving our vision for many years to come. But by driving the use of everything together, we're starting to see real step changes in what customers are able to achieve. And so driving those outcomes, making sure the customers have those successes, and to be frank about it, driving it out there in volume, having more and more people utilizing all that is kind of like our major activity. Sometimes for us, it's a lot of work right now, but we're really excited to see the number of our users out there, which are taking strong control of all of the things that we have to offer.
I like the kid in the candy store analogy. Are there customers currently using the entire portfolio, and what are some examples and benefits of them doing so?
Yeah, absolutely. And as I mentioned, that we have a number of our very top tier customers which have obtained enterprise level deals with us, and it was looking at what they were able to do, and the lack of any restraint or constraints that they had in their processes that really drove us to this. So that when we were looking at theirs, and we had some customers which had been, we have some customers of our 500 plants that are using our software. They have buying power that very often, if you had a single site, you didn't have that kind of buying power. And with that buying power, we saw that they were able to achieve things. And ultimately, we're sitting down brainstorming and go, the things they're able to do, the ways that they're able to change their overall process. And it's difficult to pinpoint any one, because they're different, whether I'm in consumer packaged goods and I have to constantly be creating new SKUs and changing up my productions and cleaning and repurposing, or if I'm in a mining process and I need to be changing my blends and putting them in different places where I'm going to dispatch them in different trains. It's all about changing the speed with which you make decisions, and with which the agility you have in your business. And when you take off those constraints, you're allowed to streamline those things. So, and I think it's been commonplace in a lot, especially like food and beverage, where we have a packaging line and you measure the overall equipment effectiveness, or OEE. We're starting to see people doing that in processes which are not so food and beverage oriented. So how do we do that in mining? How do I do that in oil and gas, right? And they don't call it OEE, by the way. They're not using those terms, but what they're recognizing is that they have a lot of these stoppages, micro stoppages, if you will, that are happening in their processes. And by being able to alleviate that, by being able to streamline the processes of making change, of making those decisions, they're finding that they're able to defer the need to actually create new plants, as they're able to increase the productivity of the existing assets they have in place without having to buy new capital assets. And so the software is really helping them optimize the assets they already have.
What's next in the product and services development pipeline? Can you talk about any trends or perhaps future offerings, what you're looking at?
I certainly can say here that we'll follow the pace of technology as we go here, because there are enablers, right? And so, going back to, we were originally partner number 13 of Microsoft. And so as we see technologies and things going on there, this has been a part of our own DNA. And so as we look at here, whether it's technologies like the cloud, whether it's technologies like artificial intelligence, because artificial intelligence is the one that's got me really thinking about it. And it was one that I was talking to a guy, and it was in the AI space, and that's what he did on a day-to-day basis. And he gave me the best explanation for how AI can be applied. At least for me, I thought it was very good. Maybe not the best ever, but he was saying that anytime you have repetitive tasks that require human decision-making processes, something that's being done very in repetitive nature, that very often you can actually teach a machine learning algorithm to be able to make those decisions. And it kind of got my wheels to turning. It's like, I used to be a system integrator. I used to be the guy that would take the sheets of piping and instrumentation diagram, take my highlighter, and I would go and I would build everything. I'd build the projects, I'd build the diagrams, I'd build the drawings, I'd do everything. And I knew where our source data was coming from. Our source data was either from the equipment list or piping instrumentation diagrams. And we're looking at how we can utilize artificial intelligence to just make those things happen, right? We believe that we can execute significant aspects of the project. So, and the thing that's really excited about this for me is that as I look towards what I call IT and OT convergence, and I recognize I'm not the only one to use that term, and it's sort of a bigger term, but when I refer to it, that's when I talk about all of those different dozens of data sets that customers have out there, those different silos, how they start to break down those silos. Well, often what happens is that their existing budgets aren't going to be increased very much. And so how do they do all of that with their existing budgets? So I need to take some of the work that they're doing today and I need to reduce it. I need to reduce the amount of time it takes for you to engineer, for you to maintain, for you to update, for you to sustain the maintenance of those systems. And when I look at technologies like artificial intelligence and cloud and even augmented reality in some of these cases, we believe that they're going to be a big part to play in the future of this. So as I mentioned here, we're definitely, I feel like the ceiling for what we can achieve and what customers are willing to attempt to achieve has really risen over the last couple of years. And I think the pandemic has been part of this. And so that's, I guess, if there is a fortunate consequence to that, at least, in the technology spectrum, is that there was a much higher recognition of the ability for technology to address and alleviate a lot of the risks that were going to be happening in our businesses. So this is something I think is going to accelerate a lot of change.
Any other things you'd like to discuss or recommend as we finish up?
The one thing I would definitely say here, for a lot of our customers and a lot of the people that may be viewing this, I recognize people are at all different aspects of the scale. And I've often referred to this as a maturity model. And I don't mean someone's immature and I don't want to insult anyone's feelings there. But when I refer to it as the maturity model, is like most businesses go through a very natural process during growth. And if I have one site, the processes and the things that I take on at my one site are often very different than if I have 500 sites. But everybody tends to go through that natural process where first you have the industrial process, then you connect and collect the data, then you try to make improvements in things, and then you try to enforce consistencies and standardization so that you can have processes that are repeatable across the globe. And so when some of the things that I may be saying, people may stand back and go like, well, I don't, that's not part for me. You should definitely be looking at here is that how do I take that step forward, right? How do I take that step from where I am today to maybe a little bit more and a little bit more. And so in some cases where those technologies may seem a bridge too far, I would suggest to you that they're probably not. And I'm not suggesting that everything is necessary for everyone. That's the reason why we started what we call these packages, these edge, these supervised, and these enterprise packages. That edge package was targeted at someone whose major focus was, again, local process cell execution. But you still have people, right? You still have people that need to do things. They still need to communicate, still need to collaborate, and still need to coordinate. So even in those cases where they don't tend to go, well, let me seek out technology first. It's our job to make the technology part of it less of a concern. Don't worry about the things like cloud and whether or not those things are behind the scenes. But I think it plays a significant part for them. And the mechanisms that we're going to market with it becomes somewhat simpler commercial decisions. So we're very excited about this, and I can't wait to see where this takes us over the next 5 to 10 years. I've been with this organization for a couple of decades now, and every time I think there's like, all right, well, we've kind of done we've done as much as we can for now. It's like, we seem to kind of break through a barrier, and right now as Aveva, we're breaking through a lot of barriers very quickly. So it's going to be an exciting time.
Where can people go to learn more, John?
You know what? You can absolutely go out to aveva.com. We have, you can find more about our operations control offering there. It's right up on our website. And certainly you can always reach out to any of your local Aveva or formerly Wonderware distributors, and they'd be happy to get you more details.
Well, thank you, John Krajewski, Vice President for Product Management of Aveva, for the discussion and for the perspectives and insights. I'm Mark T. Hosky, Control Engineering Content Manager. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Mark.